Before we start, a quick note about what this channel is and what it isn't. This isn't a recap channel, and it's not a highlight reel. We're here for the parts of Panem that happen after the cameras turn away. The systems behind the games. The contracts hidden inside victory. The lives that keep unfolding long after the anthem ends. Each video on this channel is built to slow things down, to follow the logic the Capitol relies on, the details it hopes you won't connect, and the people who live with the consequences year after year. If that's the kind of Hunger Games analysis you're looking for, you're in the right place. Subscribing just means you'll keep a seat here when we move on to the next story. Now, let's start where Panem always wants you to stop paying attention. Katniss is on the training center roof the night before the games. Cold air, glass barrier, Capitol lights burning underneath her. She's staring out over the city, trying to picture the arena, and every sparkle of light turns into a face she might have to kill. Cato with his sword, Clove weighing her knives, Marvel, Glimmer, the whole career pack moving in formation. And you get this simple, brutal question in your head. Which tribute is she secretly most afraid to face? At face value, the fandom default answer feels obvious. You think of Cato, the boy who can snap a neck in one motion. You think of Clove, who can pin a target to the wall with a knife from 20 yards. Back then, when you first read The Hunger Games, it's easy to assume Katniss is most terrified of whoever can kill her fastest. So why does the text keep pulling our attention somewhere else? Why does her fear spike at moments that have nothing to do with who's strongest in a fight? Because here's the real question. What if the scariest tribute for Katniss isn't the best killer at all, but the one who threatens something she's more afraid of losing than her life? Her own humanity. The part of her that still believes there's a reason to protect Rue, the part that volunteers for Prim and promises her, "I'll try to win." That part matters because the games aren't just a death match. They're a long, slow test of how much of yourself you're willing to trade away to come home. There is a lot to uncover here. Across the trilogy, Katniss actually tells us who terrifies her the most, but it's buried in quiet lines and rooftop conversations. It's in the way she reacts when Peter suggests they both refuse to play. It's in her horror at the careers feasting around the fire, proud of how many kids they've killed. And later, it's in the way Finnick's charm makes her skin crawl, or how Johanna's anger slices through every Capitol facade. None of them are just physical threats. They're mirrors held up to the version of Katniss the Capitol is trying to build. This is where we talk about the tribute she's most afraid to become. A career-style victor who kills on command. A Capitol-made symbol, beautiful and deadly, whose trauma is just another piece of propaganda. By the time we reach Mockingjay, is Katniss more afraid of any single tribute in the arena, or of waking up one day and realizing she's been turned into the Capitol's perfect tribute herself, owned by Snow or even Coin, with no way back to the girl on that rooftop? That's the mystery we're going to cover next. Why this question actually changes how you read The Hunger Games. So when we ask which tribute Katniss was most afraid to face, we're not just ranking who would win in a fist fight. We're cracking open her internal rulebook. What does she fear more? Pain, death, or what she might have to do to avoid them? At face value, the early games teach you a simple equation. Don't die. Kill or be killed. Fear the careers because they're bigger, stronger, and trained from the moment they can walk. Cato is the obvious answer here. He's armed, furious, and the Capitol's promise of a perfect killer from a wealthy district. That part matters because it's the surface logic Panem wants you to accept. The games are about bodies in an arena, so of course the scariest person is the one most likely to snap your neck. But here's the real question. Is that actually what keeps Katniss up at night? Very quickly, her fear starts drifting away from brute force and towards something much more dangerous, the possibility of being used. Back then in the first book, survival means outshooting Cato, by-catch-you fire and Mockingjay. Survival means outmaneuvering Snow and Coin, who both see her as a reusable weapon. So why the change? Because once you become a victor, you learn the games were never just about death. They were about ownership. This is where we talk about the emotional stakes. When Katniss looks at different tributes, she isn't just calculating odds. She's testing versions of herself. Why is she more shaken by Rue's vulnerability than by Marvel's brutality? Why does the idea of killing Peter terrify her more than the thought of Cato killing her? Why do Finnick and Johanna get under her skin in a way the careers never really managed to? There is a lot to uncover here. Katniss can handle the story where she dies protecting someone. She cannot handle the story where she becomes the Capitol's dream tribute, efficient, glamorous, and loyal to the narrative. That's why she obsesses over Peter. Killing him would mean accepting the role of career-style predator, the tribute who trades their soul for a slightly better chance at going home to a bigger house and a full pantry. When Finnick appears, he's terrifying, not because he threatens to stab her, but because he's proof that the Capitol can turn a beautiful, traumatized victor into a public fantasy on command. Johanna is terrifying because she refuses to play nice, ripping the mask off the entire system. Together, they show Katniss what long-term survival in this world really costs. And that's the upgrade no one wants. Winning doesn't end the fear. It just changes the arena. The jungle and the clock become Snow's roses and Coin's propose, and suddenly whole districts are tributes on a political game board. The real question becomes, when everyone is a potential tribute, what does most afraid to face even mean anymore? We're going to cover how the text quietly answers that next. Our lens. The tribute Katniss fears becoming. So if everyone is a potential tribute, where do you even aim your fear? Not at a single face, at a template. This is where we talk about the core claim. Katniss is scared of dying, sure, but the tribute she's most afraid to face is the one she might wake up as tomorrow. Not Cato's body, the Capitol's idea of a perfect, reusable killer wearing her skin, the victor who walks out of the arena but never actually leaves the games. At face value, the story keeps handing you obvious threats. Cato with his sword, Clove with her knives, Thresh with that rock. You're meant to feel the physical danger first, but here's the real question. Which moments actually paralyze Katniss? It's not when Cato charges her. It's when she thinks, I'll have to kill Peter, and realizes the games are trying to turn her into a career who can execute someone she cares about and live with it. So, we're going to cover the tribute she fears becoming as a whole category, almost a progression chart of horror. First, the career-style tribute. Trained, efficient, emotionally compartmentalized. She looks at the pack in the first games and doesn't just hate them. She's unnerved by how easily they've adapted. That part matters because the Capitol's promise is that if you play that role well enough, you get everything. Wealth, safety, your own house back in the district. And she can feel how tempting that is. Then you get the seductive killer model, Finnick. On the surface, he's a Capitol fantasy. Beautiful, adored, lethal with a trident and a smile. But Katniss's early reaction to him is closer to revulsion than crush. Why? Because he proves the system can turn your body, your charm, even your trauma, into a weapon the Capitol rents out. He's what happens if the games win not just your life, but your narrative. Johanna is the next evolution, the emotionally flayed weapon. She's furious, stripped of pretense, and she terrifies Katniss precisely because they're on the same side. Johanna shows her the end state of surviving too long in the arena. Everything you love is gone, and all that's left is the ability to hurt people for the right cause, or the wrong one. Is that really victory, or just a different assignment? And by Mockingjay, the model scales up. Snow and Coin become the Capitol's ultimate tributes. Political players who treat districts, victors, even children, as pieces in a never-ending quarter-quell. Katniss's deepest fear shifts from who will kill me to who will I kill for. That's why the execution yard matters so much. The games have moved to a courtyard in the Capitol, and she has to decide which version of tribute she's going to be. There is a lot to uncover here, so next we'll track this fear tribute by tribute, Cato to Coin, book to film, and watch how the arena quietly changes shape around her. Roadmap, from Cato's sword to Snow's arena. So to track that shift, we need a map. Because Katniss doesn't wake up in Mockingjay suddenly afraid of turning into Coin. That fear is built, tribute by tribute, arena by arena. First, we're going to cover the obvious starting point, the 74th Games. At face value, this is the Cato is terrifying chapter of her life. We'll walk through every moment she actually tells us who scares her, Cato's sword and temper, Clove's knives, the career pack hunting as a unit, even Thresh as this looming, unpredictable force who can crush a skull with a rock. But here's the real question. When Katniss flinches, is it really about their weapons, or about what those weapons say she might have to become? This is where we talk about the quieter fears. We'll look at the Morphlings, the girl from District 1 who dies over Rue, the tributes the narrative barely lingers on, but Katniss can't quite forget. We'll pull out the lines where she admits she's most horrified by the idea of killing Peeta herself, and how that part matters because it reframes the whole arena. The tribute she dreads most might be the one she loves, not the one charging her with a sword. Then we move into the middle act, Catching Fire and the Quarter-Quell, where the fear gets smarter. The careers are still there, but now you have Finnick and Johanna, these weaponized mirrors. We'll trace how Finnick's beauty and charm unsettle her more than his trident, and why Johanna's raw rage and nothing left to lose energy feel more dangerous than any mutt. Why does Katniss keep clocking their relationship to the Capitol, their performance, their trauma, instead of just their kill counts? Because by the time we hit the Quell's clock arena, she's starting to understand the real game. Being watched, owned, repackaged. We'll follow that realization into Mockingjay, zooming out to Snow and Coin as the Capitol's ultimate tributes. They don't enter the bloodbath, they build it. We'll ask whether her deepest terror is facing them, or waking up one day and realizing she's playing their version of the games on a national scale. After that, we'll pull back the curtain on adaptation. The books tell you, in Katniss's own words, who terrifies her. The films have to choose what to show on a face. We'll compare which threats get center stage, which reactions are softened or cut, and why casual viewers walk away convinced Kato or Snow is the main nightmare when the text is pointing somewhere else. And then the finale. We'll get a little speculative and build a composite scariest tribute out of her reactions. A Frankenstein's monster of Kato's brutality, Finnick's charm, Johanna's fury, Snow's control, and Coin's cold calculus. The question is that who she's been running from the entire time? And does she ever really escape them? Next, we'll start at the beginning. The 74th games, the cornucopia, and the first person Katniss admits truly makes her afraid. Welcome to the arena, how we read Katniss here. So before we throw Katniss back into the bloodbath of the cornucopia, this is where we talk about how we're reading her in the first place. On this channel, our whole niche is simple. Deep dive, lore-obsessed Hunger Games analysis with a focus on character psychology, political world building, and those throwaway lines that change everything on a reread. If a single muttered sentence from Haymitch can reframe an entire games for you, that's the stuff we live on. If you're new here and you enjoy picking apart rooftop conversations and elevator scenes like they're clues in a mystery, this is your place. We're the people pausing on the train to the capital to ask why Effie's offhand comment about "a deal's a deal" tells you more about Panem's social contract than half the propaganda broadcasts. At face value, it's just dialogue. But here's the real question. What does it reveal about the relationship between victors, districts, and the capital's promise of safety? We're not just recapping the plot or ranking who swung the biggest sword. We're reading Katniss like she's a real person trapped in a weaponized reality show, making split-second choices under surveillance, hunger, and grief, and then using that lens to reinterpret the entire trilogy. Why does she freeze in some moments and explode in others? Why does one tribute terrify her and another, objectively more dangerous, just annoy her? There is a lot to uncover here when you treat every reaction as data. So if you want more long-form Hunger Games breakdowns, those "wait, what if the quarter-quell twist had hit a different district" episodes, or speculative what-if scenarios about who volunteers and why, feel free to hit subscribe or just stick around to the end and see if we've earned it. We're going to cover everything from the architecture of Victor's village to the exact moment Katniss stops thinking of herself as a tribute and starts realizing she's a rebel asset. And that's where this video fits in. This episode is part of an ongoing series where we chase the hidden questions the books quietly set up. Who really wins the 74th games when every victor is still owned? When does Katniss stop fearing death and start fearing what surviving will turn her into? And today's variation on that theme, when she looks around the arena, who is she actually most afraid to face, and why? Because once we step into that first arena with her, fear becomes a map. The careers, Thresh, the Morphlings, Finnick, Johanna, each one lights up a different pressure point in her psyche. Follow that map closely enough, and the tribute she dreads most might not be the one charging her with a sword, but the one who threatens to turn her into something she swore she'd never become. Next, we go back to the cornucopia and listen to who she names first. Fear in the 74th games. Katniss's first threat map. So when we go back to that first cornucopia, who does Katniss put on the map? She tells you almost immediately. The careers. The pack from Districts 1, 2, and 4 who have been training their whole lives for this. At face value, that sounds obvious. Of course, the professional child killers are scary. But here's the real question. Why do they stick in her head so much more than anyone else? In the training center, She's doing what you would do, scanning the room, ranking threats. She notes Kato first, this huge boy from 2 with a ferocious temper who can't stand being shown up. When he loses his sword session, he storms out, and Katniss is already imagining what that rage looks like when it's pointed at her across the arena. She instantly categorizes herself as prey in his game. He's not just strong. He's been raised on the promise that killing people from poorer districts is his path to glory. There is a lot to uncover here in the way she talks about the individual careers. Marvel, the handsome boy from District 1, throws spears with casual precision. Glimmer, the girl with the flowing blonde hair, looks more model than murderer until Katniss remembers she's been taught to use that bow. Clove is small but lethal, her knives turning the practice dummy into a pincushion. Katniss's reaction is this mix of disgust and fear. She's horrified that the capital has turned kids into this, and she's terrified because that's exactly who the games are designed to reward. That part matters because her fear of them isn't just about dying, it's about what they represent. A whole system where some districts groom their children to volunteer, where you become a victor by treating other kids as targets. She keeps circling back to the pack in her thoughts, planning ways to avoid them, steal from them, outlast them. They are the center of her first threat map. Now compare that to Rue and Thresh. Rue is tiny, quick, from District 11, and Katniss clocks her as a potential problem in the trees. But almost instantly, the relationship shifts. Rue reminds her of Prim. Katniss feels protective, not predatory. With Thresh, she notes his size, his giant strength, and she's wary of running into him in close quarters. Yet she doesn't obsess over him the way she does over Cato's sword, or Clove's knives. Thresh is dangerous, but he's not haunting her every calculation. This is where we talk about a different kind of fear. The rooftop scene with Peter. Up there, he tells her he doesn't want the games to change him, and Katniss is rattled because she hasn't even framed the question that way. She's been afraid of Cato's blade, not of becoming a piece in the games. But the cameras are already her real nightmare, being turned into a capital puppet, a spectacle, a killer the audience can cheer for. So in Book 1, her fear is mostly physical and immediate. Blades, arrows, mutts. Yet around Peter, those cracks open. She's already more afraid of what the arena might make her do than she's willing to admit. And the tribute she dreads most, the one who might force her to prove exactly what kind of person she is. Next, we're going to cover the moment that fear flips, and the tribute whose death terrifies her more than her own. The obvious answer: Cato, Clove, and the career machine. So if the tribute she dreads most is tied to a choice, why does everyone still answer Cato without even blinking? At face value, it makes perfect sense. He is the arena's final boss. The boy from District 2 who's been training for the games his entire life, who moves through the bloodbath at the cornucopia like he's running drills. From the second Katniss spots him in the training center, he shapes her strategy. She avoids showing her full skill with a bow because she knows the careers will clock it. On the first night, when the cannons fire, she's not wondering who died. She's calculating whether Cato and his pack are still strong enough to sweep the field. That part matters because it tells you where her mental math goes under pressure. Not will I die, but where are they? And they almost get her. Cato's group hunts her through the trees. They pin her in that stalemate until she drops the tracker jack and nest. Later, when she blows up their food, it's not a flex. It's a desperate attempt to cripple Cato's machine before it rolls over her. Even in the finale at the cornucopia, she's sure she and Peter can't take him head on. She's counting on timing, on height, on mutts, not on being better with a blade. Here's the real question though. If Cato is just a brute, why does the narrative keep giving him these almost human flashes? Think about her reaction to Clove. Katniss is genuinely relieved when Thresh kills her. She admits it. One of the deadliest threats is gone, and she didn't have to face that knife at close range again. But when Cato is being torn apart by mutts, she doesn't revel in it. She's horrified. She puts an arrow in him to end it. The tribute she feared physically, she still can't watch him suffer. This is where we talk about the careers as a system, not just a squad of jocks with swords. Districts 1, 2, and 4 have turned the games into a career track. Children are raised to volunteer. Parents and trainers stand there proud when a 17-year-old walks towards almost certain death. Katniss isn't only afraid of their spears and axes, she's afraid of a culture where the promise of being a victor is so strong that kids are eager to kill. Pattern interrupt. What if the scariest thing about Cato isn't what he does to other tributes, but what he almost does to Katniss's self-image? She sees in the careers a version of herself that could have existed if District 12 had been different. Trained, polished, rewarded for turning killing into sport. The Capitol's dream tribute. There is a lot to uncover here about her relationship to violence. Every time she hesitates to shoot, every time she refuses to finish someone off, she's pushing back against becoming that. So we end up with a split fear. On one side, Cato and Clove as the obvious nightmare, the ones who can end her body in a heartbeat. On the other, the careers as a whole, representing a future where she might have enjoyed the games, where the line between survival and cruelty disappears. And that raises the next question. If she can face Cato's sword, why does the thought of facing Peter's death hit her so much harder? The tribute she's terrified to kill. Peter as Katniss's first true fear. If Cato is the nightmare that can kill her body, Peter is the nightmare that can kill who she is. And the moment that really sets that up doesn't happen in the arena at all. It's on a quiet rooftop the night before the games, when Peter says the one thing Katniss can't unhear. He doesn't talk about winning. He talks about dying as himself. Not as a capital puppet, not as another piece in their games. At face value, it sounds noble, almost naive. But here's the real question. What does that plant in Katniss's mind? Suddenly, the worst-case scenario isn't just dying in the arena. It's surviving as something the Capitol has remade, a victor who's been turned into a monster for the cameras. From that point on, every thought she has about Peter is colored by that rooftop promise. In the arena, she swings between suspicion and gratitude so fast it gives you whiplash. Is he with the careers because he wants to kill her, or because it's the only way to keep her alive a little longer? She owes him for the bread, she resents him for the alliance, and underneath all of that, there is a lot to uncover here. The creeping awareness that if it comes down to the two of them, the Capitol expects a love story execution. This is where we talk about fear as a slow burn instead of a jump scare. Katniss names Cato as a threat. She respects Thresh's strength. She's wary of Foxface, but she keeps circling back to one scenario with almost obsessive dread. The moment she might have to kill Peter. She imagines it. She tries not to imagine it. She tells herself she'll deal with it if it happens, which is Katniss speak, for this terrifies me more than facing the career's swords. Because killing him wouldn't just be self-defense. It would be admitting she's become exactly the kind of tribute she hates. Someone who can murder the boy who once saved her from starving and let the Capitol turn that into a rating spike. So when the rule change comes, 2 victors from the same district, of course she runs to him. It feels like a reprieve from that storm cloud hanging over her. But the second the rule is revoked, the original nightmare snaps back into place. The Capitol is demanding its perfect, tragic ending. One lover kills the other, cries on cue, sells the story. Her answer? The berries. The famous double suicide stunt is a direct response to that specific fear. She would rather risk both their lives than live as the Capitol's favorite tragic victor who murdered her partner for a crown. It's not just rebellion, it's self-preservation of identity. So in Book 1, the tribute Katniss is most afraid to face isn't the strongest fighter. It's the boy with the bread, because facing him means facing who she's willing to be. And what if the next games force her to confront that all over again, from bodies to souls? When Katniss starts fearing corruption more than death, so when Katniss steps off that train as a victor, you'd think the nightmare is over. The arena is gone. The mutts, the fire, Cato's scream, left behind. Except her brain doesn't get that memo. This is where we talk about post-games Katniss, the one who wakes up clawing at her sheets because she's sure she's back in the trees, the one who can't stand an open window because it feels too much like a sniper's line of sight. She has nightmares, flashbacks, all the classic trauma markers. But here's the real question. What actually scares her most about those moments? It isn't just reliving the arena, it's how fast she snaps back into it. Anytime there's a threat, peacekeepers at the hob, a knock at the door, snow in her living room, you watch her mind drop into games mode in a heartbeat. She's cataloguing exits, assessing weapons, calculating who dies first. There is a lot to uncover here, because the fear isn't only, they can kill me, it's, the game's built a permanent version of me who is ready to kill back. That part matters, because she starts to realize the arena didn't stay in the arena. It moved into her. And then the victory tour happens. At face value, it should be a reward, fine clothes, rich food, trains that never break down. But she's being paraded as a romantic victor, forced to replay the star-crossed lover story in every district, kissing Peter on cue while Snow watches for any crack in the performance. Remember Peter on the rooftop, terrified of becoming a piece in their games? Katniss is now the upgraded version of that fear. She's not just a piece, she's an entire scripted narrative with hair and makeup. On the train, in the square, in those suffocating Capitol interviews, her internal monologue keeps circling the same question: what am I being used to sell today? First, she's the girl who fell in love. Then, as unrest spreads, Snow warns her she's accidentally become a symbol of rebellion. The relationship between Katniss and her own image fractures. She can feel the Capitol writing over her, and she's terrified that rebels might do the same thing in reverse. So by the time we get to Catching Fire, her primary fear has shifted. It's not will I die, it's what will surviving turn me into this time. That's why her reactions to the other victors hit so hard. Finnick, weaponizing charm and beauty. Johanna, stripped down and viciously honest. BT and Wiress, minds rewired around strategy, the morphlings dissolving into addiction to escape what the games did to them. Each one is a possible future. This is what happens if you survive. And here's the real question going forward. If in her first games Katniss was terrified of becoming the killer of someone she loved, what happens when she's thrown in with victors who've already crossed that line, kept breathing, and learned to live with it? Finnick Odair, the Capital's perfect killer, and Katniss's mirror, so when catching fire throws Finnick Odair onto the beach with Katniss, you're not just meeting a fan favorite, you're watching Katniss walk straight into a weaponized version of everything she's afraid the games will turn her into. At face value, Finnick is the Capital's poster boy for a successful victor. He won at 14, he's gorgeous, draped in nets and sugar cubes, flirting in front of the cameras. The Capital adores him. The other tributes respect him. On paper, he's the dream outcome the games promise to the districts. Survive young, become rich, never worry about the reaping again. But here's the real question. Why does Katniss's first instinct, when he turns those sea green eyes on her, feel closer to revulsion than admiration? From the second he offers her that infamous sugar cube, Katniss is on edge. He calls her sweetheart, invades her space, acts as if there's already an intimate relationship between them. She's not blushing, she's calculating. What's the angle? Who is he trying to play? There is a lot to uncover here because she recognizes the performance. Finnick is doing effortlessly what she has been forced to do with Peter. Sell a romance, sell a persona, sell access to his body and emotions as a survival tactic in a never-ending arena. That part matters because it's not just flirtation that unsettles her. It's that he's good at it. Too good. When you've been coached to kiss your friend on command for the cameras, watching someone else wield charm as a blade is terrifying. He proves he can pivot from teasing to lethal in a heartbeat, taking out other tributes with horrifying efficiency. So Katniss isn't just thinking, he can kill me. She's thinking, this is what happens if you let the games finish the job on your soul. Now, she doesn't yet know the full truth. That Finnick has been prostituted to the Capital's elite. That his beauty is a leash Snow wraps around his throat. But the text hints that she senses the wrongness. His eyes don't match his smile. His ease feels rehearsed. You ever meet someone who seems too polished for the situation? That's a pattern interrupt for Katniss. It screams that the games didn't end for him. They just changed sets. This is where we talk about why her fear of Finnick evolves. Once she realizes on the beach that he's protecting Peter, once she sees his panic over Annie, the predator frame cracks. He stops being the threat in front of her and becomes a preview of what the Capital can do to someone like her over time. A victor who won, who got the mansion and the money, and ended up more owned than before. So when you ask which tribute Katniss is most afraid to become, Finnick is right at the top. Beautiful, charming, deadly, and completely controlled. He's less a danger to her life than a mirror held up to her future, and that's always scarier than any mutation. And if Finnick is the mirror of what she could be with cooperation, who's the mirror of what she could be with pure rage? That's where we're going next. Johanna Mason, the tribute who tears Katniss's mask off. If Finnick is the Capital's polished poster boy, Johanna Mason is what happens when the poster gets ripped off the wall. You remember her elevator scene. Everyone does. She steps in with Katniss, Peter, Haymitch, and just starts stripping. Dress, shoes, undergarments, gone. At face value, it's a joke about capital excess and sexual bravado. But here's the real question. Why does it shake Katniss so badly that she can't even look up? It's not the nudity. This is a world where stylists parade you around half-dressed for ratings. The problem is that Johanna refuses to play by the script. She weaponizes vulnerability, turning her own body into a giant eye roll at capital decorum, and by extension, at the whole performance Katniss is still trapped in. Katniss is standing there trying to remember who she's supposed to be. The girl on fire, the devoted lover, the reluctant victor from a poor district who should be grateful for the promise of safety. Johanna just opts out. She doesn't flirt with Peter for the cameras. She doesn't pretend Haymitch is respectable. She stares straight at Katniss's costume and basically says, with her actions, "I see the cage. I'm not pretending it's a palace." That part matters because it exposes that Katniss is still pretending even when she tells herself she's rebelling. This is where we talk about fear. Not the fear of being axed in the arena, but the fear of someone seeing through you. In the training center, Joanna keeps poking at Katniss's act. She mocks the star-crossed lovers, calls out the way Katniss plays innocent, and talks about the Capitol with an open hatred Katniss is terrified to voice. You can feel Katniss flinch every time Johanna says what she's only thinking. Why is that so dangerous? Because Johanna's honesty threatens the delicate relationship Katniss has with survival. Katniss still believes there's a line she can walk, perform enough to keep her family safe, but hate the games in private. Johanna is living proof that once the Capitol has taken everything, her family, her district life, any real hope of anonymity, that line disappears. All she has left is refusal, and that's another future Katniss can't stand to look at. Johanna is a victor whose entire family has been slaughtered in retaliation. She has the mansion, the status, the direct line to the Capitol, and none of it means anything. Her only power is to not cooperate, to keep her pain on display where Snow can't turn it into a feel-good story. It's raw. It's messy. It's what happens when the games win and you still refuse to bow. So when you ask which tribute Katniss is most afraid to face, Johanna is terrifying on a psychological level. She has already paid the price Katniss is trying so hard to avoid, and she keeps forcing Katniss to look at that bill. The question becomes, if cooperation turns you into Finnick and rage turns you into Johanna, what's left? We're going to cover the one tribute who answers that by changing the rules of the games entirely. The Morphlings, BT, Wiress. When broken tributes are the scariest. If Finnick and Johanna are the tributes who shove the truth in your face, the Morphlings, BT, and Wiress are the ones who whisper it in the background. At face value, the Morphlings are the easiest to ignore. Katniss meets them in training and immediately files them away as non-threats, addicted to capital drugs, zoning out, obsessing over the paint station, while everyone else throws spears. They smear colour on their arms, giggle at textures, drift through the room as if the games are happening on some other planet. You can feel Katniss doing the mental math. Career tributes, dangerous. Finnick, dangerous. These two, harmless. There is a lot to uncover here, because that instinct to dismiss them is exactly what the Capitol is counting on. Here's the real question. Why are they like this in the first place? These aren't random addicts. They're former victors whose only way to live with what they've done is to chemically blur it. Their drug dependence, their erratic childlike focus on color and sensation, that's not quirk, that's evidence. Evidence that winning didn't save them. It just gave them enough access to morphling to erase themselves a little more every day. And then the jungle scene blows that assumption apart. When the female morphling throws herself between Peter and the monkey Mutts, Katniss watches this woman, this harmless tribute, die for a boy she barely knows. She doesn't grandstand, she doesn't give a speech, she just clings to Peter's face, staring at the green of his eyes, the green of the jungle, as the life drains out of her. That part matters, because it forces Katniss to confront the relationship between fragility and courage. The morphling isn't scary because she might kill Katniss. She's scary because she proves that someone utterly broken by the games can still choose a final, conscious act of sacrifice and then vanish, unnamed, back into the system. This is where we talk about BT and Wiress, the other kind of broken. BT is sharp, strategic, clearly a threat in the arena. Katniss respects him almost immediately, but Wiress unnerves her. She wanders, mutters, tick, tock, loses track of basic survival tasks. Katniss is uncomfortable with her, half protective and half impatient, because Wiress is what happens when your mind never leaves the arena, even when your body does. She's the living proof that a victor can be brilliant and still shattered beyond repair. BT and Wiress together are a forecast. This is what long-term victory looks like. Genius wired directly into trauma. They can hack force fields and outthink careers, but they jump at sounds, fixate on patterns, and carry the games around in their nervous systems. You watch Katniss clock this. Surviving once doesn't mean you're free. It just means the games move inside you. So why are these tributes the quietest horror in the Quarter Quell? Because they answer the question Johanna raises. If cooperation turns you into Finnick and rage turns you into Johanna, the morphlings BT and Wiress show you the third option. You win, and the games still eat you. Slowly. They are the walking reminder that the real tribute Katniss is up against isn't any single opponent. It's the arena itself, the Capitol's design, the promise that even victory is just another kind of sentence. And once Katniss starts to see that, one other tribute suddenly becomes much more terrifying. Pattern break. What if the scariest tribute isn't in the arena at all? So let's stop the arena for a second. Freeze the tracker jackers, mute the cannons, pull the camera back. Because we've been in a pattern. First, you have Cato and the careers. The obvious predators. They're the reason you check every rustle in the trees. Then Peter, the moral trap, the tribute who turns every shot you fire into a question about who you're becoming. Finnick and Joanna arrive as corrupted mirrors, proof that even the most charismatic victor can be hollowed out by the games. And finally the morphlings. BT, Wiress, walking trauma warnings, showing you what winning really costs. So far, every fear has had a face, a body, a weapon. What if the tribute Katniss is most afraid to face isn't another kid with a spear at the cornucopia at all? What if the real horror is the person who turns kids into weapons in the first place? This is where we talk about the word tribute itself. At face value, it's simple. One boy and one girl from each district sent into the arena as payment to the Capitol. But the series keeps stretching that definition until it breaks. Suddenly, almost everyone in Panem is a tribute to something. Peacekeepers are tributes to the Capitol's hunger for spectacle. Even Haymitch is a tribute to the Capitol's need for a broken, entertaining victor on screen. There is a lot to uncover here, because once you see that pattern, Snow and Coin stop being leaders and start looking like the capital's ultimate tributes. They're not outside the games. They're the ones who have completely surrendered their morality to it. Snow offers up children every year to maintain his power. Coin is willing to restart the games with capital children to cement hers. Same arena, just a bigger scoreboard. Any career tribute kills to survive a single season. Snow and Coin kill to keep the game itself alive. That part matters because it reframes the whole relationship between arena and nation. The cornucopia is just a miniature version of the map of Panem. The hovercrafts, the mutts, the betting, the anthem every night. Those are tools they use on a national scale. The only difference is camera angle. And once Katniss's world widens, her fear shifts upward. In Book 1, she's terrified of becoming a career-style killer. In Catching Fire, she's terrified of losing Peter and watching victors she admires be recycled as tributes. By Mockingjay, the thing that keeps her up isn't Cato's sword, it's the architects. What happens when you realize the real game is deciding who gets sacrificed and why? What if the next move isn't surviving the arena, but being asked to design the next version of it? That's the future Katniss starts to see, and the terrifying possibility that one day she could be the one choosing which children get sent to die. And that's where the scariest tribute of all steps into focus. President Snow, the capital's longest-running tribute. President Snow is never called a tribute on the page, but you feel it anyway. From the first time he appears with that white rose, you're already in an arena you can't see. The flower is beautiful, controlled, theatrical. Then Katniss notices the smell, not just roses, blood, rotting beneath the perfume. At face value, he's a distant executioner, the man who can erase a district with a nod. But here's the real question. Why does he bother coming to her kitchen table in person? There is a lot to uncover here. Snow doesn't send peacekeepers to threaten Katniss. He shows up in her home, drinks her tea, and quietly reminds her he knows about the berries, about Gale, about everything. That part matters because it reframes her fear. Early on, she's not scared of his face, she's scared of his reach. One word, and Prim, her mother, the entire seam are gone. He's less a man and more a mythical force of capital punishment, a living promise that the games never end. Then, Catching Fire happens, and the camera zooms in. Their private conversation before the victory tour is where we're going to cover the real shift. Snow doesn't say, "Obey or die." He says, "Convince me you love Peter." Suddenly he's not just a dictator, he's a game maker. He's watching her expressions, her body language, judging her performance the way Seneca judged tributes interviews. You're not in District 12 anymore. You're on his stage. So why is Snow, of all people, the capital's longest-running tribute? Because he plays by the rules of the game better than anyone. He has accepted that everything is performance. The roses to hide the blood in his mouth, the measured speeches, the curated cruelty. He's the capital's ideal victor. Someone who has sacrificed anything human to maintain control, who lives in constant fear of losing the crowd's obedience. His arena is the entire country, and he knows one bad move can turn the audience. And that's what Katniss really fears. Not just personal death, but what he can force her to do to avoid it. Marry Peter on command. Sell the star-crossed lover's story forever. Smile through interviews as a symbol for a regime she hates. In other words, become his piece. The nightmare isn't Snow killing her, it's Snow turning her into another Finnick, another Johanna, weaponizing her trauma as capital entertainment. This is where we talk about hope. On the rooftop, Snow's philosophy comes through Coriolanus's successors. Hope, it is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is dangerous. Snow understands that hope, carefully controlled, is far more powerful than fear alone. Katniss's terror, by Mockingjay, is that he can still script her hope, steer her into being a mascot, whether for him or for Coin. The question isn't just whether she can defeat Snow, it's whether she can escape his game altogether, and what happens when the next tribute in line, President Coin, steps up to play. President Coin, the tribute Katniss almost becomes. So when Snow's game finally starts to crack, the story does something cruel. It hands Katniss a new game maker. President Coin walks in as the answer to everything you've been taught to hope for. Underground district, organized resistance, a leader who isn't dripping roses and blood. But here's the real question. Why does Katniss feel uneasy, almost from the first meeting? At face value, Coin is perfectly reasonable. She's polite, controlled, she thanks Katniss for her sacrifice, offers medical care, offers a role, but you can feel the distance. Coin doesn't talk to Katniss as a traumatized girl from a mining district. She talks to her as an asset, a symbol to be deployed. When she offers the Mockingjay role, it isn't a relationship. It's a contract. You perform, we win. That part matters because it's the exact promise Snow once made, just with better lighting. This is where we talk about mirroring. Watch how Coin slowly starts running her revolution as if it's a higher-minded version of the games. She needs propaganda? She orders propo after propo, scripting Katniss's grief into a weapon. She controls information, keeping Peter's condition, the bombing plans, even district casualty numbers on a strict need-to-know basis. The reason is simple. If the narrative wins, the people will accept any cost. Sound familiar? Snow used televised slaughter to keep the districts in line. Coin uses televised heroism to keep them moving forward. Different footage, same logic. You are valuable as long as your pain advances the story. Katniss starts to notice, why are mass casualties in District 2 framed as necessary? Why does Coin hesitate to rescue Peter until it's strategically perfect? Why does every conversation circle back to what Katniss can do on camera rather than what she actually wants? There is a lot to uncover here, but the short version is, Coin is running a war, and she's doing it by treating everyone as potential tributes. And then we get the moment that rips away the last illusion, the proposal for a symbolic final Hunger Games using capital children. Not theoretical, not metaphorical, actual kids reaped and sacrificed to balance the scales. When Coin floats that idea, it horrifies Katniss because it proves something she's been afraid to name. Coin is willing to replicate the Capitol's cruelty as long as the victims are on the other side. So why is Coin the tribute Katniss is most afraid to face? Because Coin is what happens when you let arena logic run your entire revolution. Everything becomes a game. Every child becomes expendable as long as you can say the word justice with a straight face. That's why, at Snow's execution, the real shot that matters isn't the one we've been promised for 3 books. It's the one Katniss aims at Coin. In that second, she refuses to become the kind of victor who sacrifices children for power and calls it peace. She breaks the game instead of winning it. But if she kills the new tribute before the arena is even built, what exactly is left standing? And who steps into the vacuum that Coin was so carefully preparing to fill? So when Katniss kills Coin instead of Snow, she's not just assassinating a president, she's executing a version of herself. To see that, you have to go all the way back to the rooftop in Book 1. Peter says he doesn't want the games to change him, doesn't want to be a piece in their games. At face value, Katniss brushes it off. She's focused on food, fire, logistics. But here's the real question. Why does that line echo in her head for 3 books straight? Because Peter names the fear she can't look at yet. Not dying, not pain, being changed into something the Capitol wants. This is where we talk about Katniss versus Katniss. Through all 3 books, there is a lot to uncover here if you track the moments where she scares herself. In the first arena, she almost enjoys killing the careers by dropping the tracker Jacker nest. She's nauseous, but she also feels a flash of satisfaction. Later, when she shoots Marvel after Rue's death, there's a second where the shot feels good, efficient, deserved. Then she's horrified that any part of her took pleasure in it. In Catching Fire, the tactical thinking comes faster. She's mapping the clock, calculating allies, deciding whose skills are worth more. When the morphling from District 6 dies saving Peter, Katniss notices how quickly she files the death under necessary cost. That part matters because she immediately questions herself. When did I start doing this math with people's lives? By Mockingjay, the numbness is the real enemy. She walks through mass graves in District 12 and feels not enough. She worries that the games and the war have hollowed her out so much that grief can't reach her anymore. Isn't that exactly what the Capitol wants from a perfect victor? Someone who can watch horror and keep moving. Now compare those flashes to the tributes she fears. The careers who enjoy killing and see the arena as their rightful stage. Finnick, who turns charm and intimacy into weapons on command. Johanna, who lets rage be her only language. Snow, and Coin, who treat tributes and districts as pieces on a board. Each one is a road she could take if she stops resisting. Here's the pattern interrupt. The tribute Katniss is most afraid of isn't Cato charging her with a sword. It's Katniss Everdeen, capital asset. A charismatic, lethal symbol who kills on command and calls it necessary. It doesn't really matter whether it's for the Capitol or the rebellion, if the internal logic is the same. Children die, and you call it strategy. So her biggest choices become assassination attempts on that future self. The berries with Peter, refusing to be the victor who sells out another tribute to win. The alliance in Catching Fire, refusing to let the games pit her against people she should stand beside. The arrow at Coin, refusing to endorse one last Hunger Games and become the Mockingjay who justifies it. She kills the tribute she refuses to be before the arena can be rebuilt around her. But if she destroys that role, what does resistance look like without a Games-approved symbol? And who decides what Katniss Everdeen is for now? Text versus screen. How the movies hide Katniss's real fears. And here's where the adaptation quietly picks a side. If your only experience of the games is the films, who feels dangerous? It's the obvious answers. Cato charging through the bloodbath, the mutts tearing through the cornucopia, Clove with the knife at your eye. At face value, the camera is trained on teeth, blades, and bruises. But here's the real question. What happens to Katniss's fear when you can't hear her think? On the page, there is a lot to uncover here. The books are basically Katniss's brain on a live feed. Every time she wonders whether she'll have to kill Peter, whether she'll turn into a career-style predator, you're right there. That part matters because her worst nightmare isn't just dying in the arena, it's surviving as the Capitol's favorite monster. In the films, that internal monologue has to compete with spectacle, so the edit leans into the clean visual story. Brutal boy from District 2. Scary, wolf mutt scary. Problem solved. Think about the rooftop conversations before the games. In the book, they're long, looping, and uncomfortable. Peter talks about not wanting to be a piece in their games. Katniss doesn't even understand the question at first. You watch her slowly realize that winning might mean losing herself. In the movie, that scene is there, but trimmed, smoothed, turned into a poetic beat under the stars. The dread doesn't have time to settle in your stomach. This is where we talk about Finnick. On screen, he enters as a flirty golden boy, then shifts quickly into tragic mentor and sacrificial hero. You absolutely read him as an ally. In Catching Fire, the novel, though, Katniss is terrified of him at first, not just because he can kill you with a trident while smiling, but because he represents the Capitol's ideal tribute: beautiful, charming, lethal, and owned. Her internal reaction is, essentially, if the Capitol gets its way, this is what I become. The movies keep his trauma, but soften that mirror, so you're less aware that he's showing Katniss a possible future version of herself. Johanna gets a similar sanding down. Yes, the elevator strip scene made it in. It's shocking, awkward, even funny. But in the book, Johanna keeps pressing. She needles Katniss about her fake romance, about her relationship to the rebellion, about what kind of victor she's willing to be. It's psychological warfare, not just chaos. Without Katniss's running commentary, the films tilt Johanna toward unhinged friend rather than terrifying truth-teller who sees straight through you. So when you leave the theater, who was Katniss most afraid of? The framing nudges you toward Cato, toward whoever swung the biggest sword. The books, with full access to her thoughts, keep insisting on a harder answer. The tributes who show her what the Capitol wants her to become. Which means our next question isn't just who scared her, but who she's really fighting when she steps into any arena at all. Rebuilding the scariest tribute, a Frankenstein of Katniss's nightmares. So if Katniss isn't really fighting Cato, who is she fighting? This is where we talk about the scariest tribute she never actually meets. The one built out of all her worst fears. At face value, you can point to individual threats. Cato's brute force, Thresh's silent power, Finnick's smile with a spear behind it. But here's the real question. What happens if you stitch all of those together into one person and drop them into the arena with her? Start with physical dominance, because the games teach you to notice muscle first. She clocks Cato's training immediately, and she's terrified of what Thresh could do if he decided she was the enemy. So our composite tribute moves like a career, hits like Thresh, and never hesitates. Then you add enjoyment of the games, that horrible ease the careers have when they laugh around the fire. This tribute doesn't just survive the arena. They're fluent in it, the way you're fluent in your own language. Now weaponize charm. Finnick terrifies Katniss before he ever threatens her, because he shows how the Capitol can turn beauty and charisma into a blade. Our ultimate tribute is beloved by the Capitol, paraded as a promise that the system works. They flirt, they joke, they sell the romance storyline without flinching, even as they're dying inside. Then you graft on Joanna's raw rage and honesty. No filter, no polite mask. This tribute will tell the Capitol exactly what it did to them. But somehow, that fury only makes their interviews trend higher. Add the visible trauma of the morphlings and Wiress, the shaking hands, the dissociation, the way their pain is turned into spectacle. That part matters because Katniss can't just hate or pity this person. She recognizes the damage. Finally, give them Snow and Coin's cold, strategic detachment. They read the board the way Snow reads districts and Coin reads rebels. Every alliance is a calculation. Every death is a move. We're going to cover their backstory the way the Capitol would in a montage. Trained from childhood, sexually exploited, family murdered on camera, then repackaged as a propaganda symbol. By the time they enter the arena, they understand the relationship between performance and survival better than any victor we see on the page. Why is that so terrifying for Katniss? Because this tribute isn't just an opponent, they're a possible future. You can map them onto her life beat for beat, and just flip a few choices. Take Finnick on the beach, Johanna in the elevator, Coin in the command center. Now imagine Katniss realizing those were all fragments of one archetype the Capitol has been trying to sculpt her into. So here's the question that haunts the trilogy. Is this ultimate tribute even a person anymore, or just the games themselves, wearing whatever face the Capitol or the rebellion needs next? And if that's true, what does it mean that everyone keeps asking Katniss to step into that role? Hope versus fear. Why the Capitol needs Katniss to be afraid of the wrong people. And this is where we talk about why the Capitol needs that ultimate tribute idea in the first place. Because Panem doesn't just run on bread and circuses. It runs on a very specific ratio of hope to fear. You see it spelled out in that Snow Seneca Crane scene. Snow says, hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. But then he adds the fine print. A little hope is effective. A lot is dangerous. Too much fear and the districts shut down. Too much hope and they rebel. The games exist to walk that razor's edge. So, how do you keep that balance inside the arena? You point everyone's fear in the wrong direction. At face value, the danger is simple. Cato versus Katniss, careers versus underdogs. 24 kids trapped in a murder forest. But here's the real question. Why does the Capitol work so hard to make sure the tributes are terrified of each other instead of the people who built the arena? If every tribute woke up one morning and realized, wait, the real enemy is the system that put us here, the games collapse in a single alliance. There is a lot to uncover here in how Katniss's own fear map evolves. In Book 1, she's scared of the obvious threats, Cato's brute force, Clove's knives, the pack of careers hunting her down. Her strategy is built on avoidance. Stay hidden, stay small, survive. But the moment Rue dies and Katniss decorates her body with flowers, her fear tilts. She's not just afraid of the tributes anymore. She's afraid of what the games are turning her into if she keeps playing by their rules. By catching fire, that shift is almost complete. Finnick terrifies her at first, not just because he can kill with a trident, but because he's proof of how beautifully the Capitol can weaponize a person. Johanna's rage is scary for the opposite reason. It's unfiltered, aimed upward instead of sideways. Katniss starts fearing the architects outside the force field. Snow, Plutarch, the game makers, more than any opponent sharing the beach with her. And that part matters because it's the Capitol's biggest failure. They let her see behind the curtain. Finnick's secrets about sexual exploitation, Johanna's story of being punished through her loved ones, District 13's cold calculus with Peter's torture footage. Each revelation teaches Katniss that the enemy tribute is usually just another victim. Once you know that, it's very hard to go back to being afraid of the wrong people on command. So when we ask who Katniss was most afraid to face, we're not just doing fandom trivia, we're going to cover something much bigger. Is she still under the Capitol's spell, flinching at the Catos and cloves they throw at her? Or has she already broken the game by realizing the scariest tribute is the one the system is trying to make her become? Because if her fear has shifted for good, then the balance Snow bragged about, it's already gone. So, who is it? Pinning down Katniss's most terrifying opponent. So, if the balance is already gone, who actually tipped it? We've circled a lot of names, so this is where we talk about the shortlist. On the surface, it feels simple. Cato is the walking nightmare, career training, brute strength, pure rage. At face value, he's exactly who the games want you to fear. But here's the real question. When Katniss pictures the moment her arrow has to enter someone's body, who makes her stomach drop? It isn't Cato, it's Peter, standing at the cornucopia, soaked in rain and loyalty. Cato is terrifying as a predator, Peter is terrifying as a choice. Across Book 1, the text keeps nudging you toward this. She tracks Cato's movements, respects Thresh's power, clocks Clove's knives, yet the dread that actually paralyzes her is the thought of killing Peter herself. That part matters because it's not about whether she survives, it's about what surviving would turn her into. Killing Cato would be self-defense. Killing Peter would be a verdict on her own humanity. So in that first arena, the tribute she's most afraid to face is Peter. Not because he can overpower her, but because facing him forces the question the Capitol has been engineering since the Reaping. Are you willing to become a career of your own story? A perfect little weapon who can execute the one person who tried to protect you and then smile for the cameras. By catching fire, though, the fear shifts. We're going to cover why Finnick and Johanna feel different the moment they step on stage. Finnick is the Capitol's dream victor, beautiful, charming, lethal, with a rope and a smile. Johanna walks in furious and stripped of pretense, already what Katniss could become if she lets the trauma burn everything else away. Katniss isn't just scared they'll kill her, she's scared they're showing her the future. This is what victors become when the games never end. Then Mockingjay takes that same pattern and scales it up. The tributes she fears most don't even enter an arena. Snow and Coin are political tributes, offering themselves as champions of their respective sides, while treating Katniss as the real weapon on the board. What terrifies her is the version of herself each of them is trying to manufacture. Snow's obedient symbol of failed hope, Coin's sanitized executioner of children from the wrong district. So when we synthesize all of this, a pattern appears. The tribute Katniss is most afraid to face is always the one who forces her to confront her own capacity to be used. In Book 1, that's Peter at the cornucopia. In Catching Fire, it's Finnick in the arena, proof you can be adored and still owned. In Mockingjay, it's Coin on the execution platform, daring Katniss to become the Capitol's new career. Can all of that be true at once? Yes, Cato is terrifying, Peter is the hardest to kill, but the deepest, most enduring fear isn't of any single opponent, it's of becoming the Capitol's ideal tribute. in whatever war is currently playing. And the real question is, does she ever fully escape that role, or does the game's promise follow her home forever? What this changes about Katniss and about us as viewers. If you take that fear seriously, the fear of becoming the Capitol's ideal tribute, it quietly rewrites Katniss's whole arc. She stops being the standard, reluctant action hero and turns into something much more fragile and much more intense. Someone fighting a constant internal war just to stay human, while a system tries to turn her into profitable trauma on legs. Because that's the business model, right? The games don't just kill you, they sandblast your morality into a marketable edge. And Katniss's real question, scene after scene, is never just, how do I survive? It's, who do I have to be to survive? And can I live with that? Look at the berries again with this in mind. At face value, it's a romantic double suicide bluff. But there is a lot to uncover here. She's not only refusing to kill Peter, she's refusing the role of the lone, glorious victor the Capitol wants. The stunt says, I will die before I become the tribute who executes the person I'm supposed to care about for your entertainment. That part matters because it's the first time she weaponizes her refusal instead of her bow. Same thing with Rue. Katniss could use Rue as a tool, district camouflage, extra eyes in the trees, disposable ally. Instead, she builds a relationship. She sings to her. She covers her in flowers. In terms of pure games logic, that's a terrible move. But this is where we talk about what she's actually afraid of. She's terrified of becoming the career who steps over a child's body and keeps walking. Jump to the beach with Finnick. On paper, he's the nightmare. Beautiful, lethal, adored by the Capitol. But when he breaks and tells her about Snow's abuse, she does something crucial. She believes him. She doesn't reduce him to a weapon or a threat. She recognizes another person being chewed up by the same machine. Every time she does that, she dodges the tribute she fears becoming. Even the elevator with Johanna is part of this. Johanna strips, swears, mocks the Capitol's gaze. Katniss is horrified, but also fascinated, because Johanna is doing the thing Katniss can't yet do, refusing to let the arena or the cameras define her shame. Later, in the propo shoots, Katniss keeps breaking script whenever Coin's team tries to turn her into a clean revolutionary mascot. Different arena, same pressure, same fight, not to be reprogrammed. And then the final arrow. She could kill Snow, close the loop, become the perfect rebel victor. Instead, she kills Coin, refusing to graduate into the upgraded career of the new regime. That's her last desperate no. So where does that leave us as viewers? If your first instinct was, Cato is the scariest, what does that say? We're trained to fear obvious violence more than the slow, systemic corruption that manufactures tributes in the first place. Exactly the way the Capitol citizens are. Here's the real question. On a rewatch, in every scene, who is Katniss really afraid of? The person with the weapon, or the power deciding what counts as a win? And if we track that, what does it reveal about where the real power in Panem actually lives? Your turn in the arena, community theories and next deep dives. So now it's your turn in the arena. We've tracked Katniss's fear from Cato's sword to Snow's roses, from the mutts at the cornucopia to the quiet moment where she realizes the real game is deciding who she's willing to become. Here's the real question for you. Based on the books or the movies, Who do you think Katniss is most afraid to face? And did anything in this breakdown actually shift your answer? Is it the obvious career threat, Cato sprinting down the cornucopia? Is it Fresh, standing in the rain with the power to end her in a second and choosing not to? Is it Finnick, all charm and poison sugar? Or Johanna, who walks into the elevator and tears off the Capitol's costume in one move? Or is it Peter, in that awful moment where the Capitol might force her to kill the one person who still believes she's more than a piece in their games? Tell me which tribute you'd least want to see across the arena, and why. To go deeper, I'd love specific receipts. What's your favourite quote where Katniss actually reveals her fear, not just of dying, but of what the games are turning her into? Is it her dread of owing Thresh? Her horror at the Mutt's eyes? Her panic at the thought of becoming a career-style killer? There is a lot to uncover here in the small lines, the throwaway reactions that show you which threats really live rent-free in her head. And who's your most underrated tribute in this whole question? Maybe you read Thresh as a moral foil, the victor Katniss could have been if the system hadn't needed a love story. Maybe you think the Morphlings deserve more attention as the end state of capital exploitation, or that some random career in the background actually tells you more about District 1's relationship with Hope than Cato ever does. This is where we talk about the tributes who never get merch but quietly break the narrative open. If you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, we're going to cover 2 arcs that completely rewire the arena when you rewatch. First, Finnick's secret backstory and how, once you know what the Capitol did to him, every flirtatious line turns into a survival tactic and every smile is a weapon he's forced to sell. Then, Johanna as the rebellion's angriest truth-teller, the tribute who refuses the promise of being fixed and instead weaponizes her trauma against the system that caused it. If that's the kind of long-form Hunger Games content you want more of, the kind that treats Panem as a real political machine and Katniss as a real traumatized teenager trying to survive it, hit the buttons that tell the algorithm this: story matters, or share it with someone who still thinks winning makes you free. Because at face value, the scariest tribute is the one holding the sword. But in every story built on games and spectacle, the most dangerous tribute is the one holding the script. The Capitol always has a script. The question is whether we keep playing our part or not. And if we stop, that's the arena I want to step into next.